us we have Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Professor Prasad. Thank you, Professor Prasad, for agreeing to this special interview. We're just about a week away from you presenting the 2025-2026 national budget to the people of Fiji. You definitely are looking at budget is always a balancing act. You can't please everybody. How are things going so far?
Very good, Vijay. And as I said to other media organizations, that this budget reflects on how we managed our first two budgets. And I think it is appropriate for me to give you that snapshot. So in the first budget, when we came into government, we had to stabilize our finances, get our fiscal policy, get the government funded properly. So we did a number of reforms, tax reforms, expenditure reforms, policy reforms, and made sure that we continued with the support to our people. We realized that people were still transitioning post-COVID because of loss of income, jobs, people were getting back on their feet. And so we did a package in the first budget that funded government well, that increased our revenue. We used that revenue to support our people. We raised social welfare allowances. We brought back things like, we initiated new ideas like back to school support, supported farmers throughout the agriculture sector, small medium enterprises. So in total, in the first budget, we directly allocated 700 to 800 million through different ministries to support our people, because we were able to reform our taxes, our policies, our revenue base increased. That was our first budget. And in the second budget, we realized that we also had to look at the income side, because we had done the tax reform in the first budget.
Which included the increase in VAT.
Which included, not in the increase in VAT in that sense, it was removing 3 rates and keeping 2. So we had zero VAT,
for
22 items, 21 plus we added prescribed medicine, 22. And we moved 9 to 15 because with 3 rates of VAT, there was a lot of distortion. A lot of revenue leakage. People were charging, businesses were charging 15% and paying 9% to government, charging 9% and paying 0 sometimes to government. So as a result of that, we were able to raise 300 to 400 million more revenue. We raised company tax as well. So it was not just VAT reform. It was company tax from 20 to 25%, plus other reforms that we did to make sure that government is also funded well. In the second budget, we realized that people also needed to raise their incomes. You can't just control prices, can't just continue to support people without making sure that people are also earning additional income. So as soon as we came into government, minimum wage went to $4, 1st of January 2023. Then in 2024, 1st of August, it went to $4.50. Then 1st of April in 2025, it went to $5. And what we've seen is right across the sectoral areas, sectoral wages, every sector in this country saw wage and salary increase. Whether it's tourism, whether it's construction. Plus, we increased the salaries of the civil servants who didn't have any salary increase since 2017, between the range of 7 to about 20%. So, in the last budget, and we compensated, people such as those, the Batukola gold mines and others. And what we saw is that the economic prospects increased significantly in 2024, and more so in the second half of 2024, because originally we had forecasted a growth rate of 2.8%. We ended up with a revised growth of 3.8%. In fact, we would end up close to 4% growth in 2024. So we had a good 2023, we had a good 2024, we are now looking at the 2025 budget, and we are in a much stronger position to now address the issue of the impending global economic crisis, global economic slowdown, wars in the Middle East, tariff war that is going on. So there is this global uncertainty. And so as a government, we are anticipating a slowdown globally. And some of those, the slowdown globally will have impact on us through various mechanisms. Tourism, remittances, trade, but more so remittances and tourism. Against all the prediction made by some economists last year that our tourism numbers will go down drastically, it didn't, it actually increased. We saw some slowdown from countries like New Zealand. New Zealand economy is still in recession. It's understandable, but we see the overall numbers. The first quarter, there was a slowdown, but the information that we have, that the forward bookings look very good, and we are expecting tourism to remain strong. But if there is a global economic slowdown, Israel-Iran war, for example, the Ukraine war, if these escalate into bigger conflicts, affects the price of oil, which I just saw yesterday is rising. It hasn't risen to a point where it can have drastic impact. So we are assessing all this, and this budget, Vijay, is going to be a slightly expansionary budget, which means that we will raise our expenditure. We will make sure that our domestic response is already there to cushion these flow-on effects from a global economic slowdown. That would be a smart, good policy approach. And the reason why we would be able to do that, increase our deficit a little bit, increase our expenditure, allocate more funding for infrastructure, support people more if we feel that people are falling behind, in terms of food prices, etc., salaries and wages. We are going to put a package where you will see that the total expenditure may be higher than what we had last year. And our ability to do that comes from the fact that we did the right thing in the first two budgets. Government is funded, our revenue base remains very strong. And so if we have a slightly expansionary budget, 2025, 2026, we will cushion any of the negative impacts or direct hit on our people through tourism, through remittances. And we feel that the level of investment, DPM Komkomida has talked about this. There are billions of dollars worth, billions of dollars investment that is in the pipeline, that is already happening. So we have a very strong investment growth as well. I mean, you look at the growth in Vanuatu. Vanuatu is booming. The tourism development project that we signed in 2023, the World Bank Tourism Development Project, 400 million over the next 10 years, is already having an impact. The upgrade of the Lambasa airport, other infrastructure in Vanuatu is having a good impact on growth in Vanuatu. And in fact, in the next 10 to 15 years, Vanuatu would be a growth center. Apart from that, we see a surge in domestic confidence, investor confidence. We see a lot of investments starting, under construction, planned. And the other thing that we maintain, against the advice of some of our international organizations, is we maintained a low interest rate. Our liquidity position is fine, our reserves are fine. So our economic fundamentals are solid. And we managed the last two budgets in a very prudent, in a very sensible, and in a very responsible manner. And the result of that is good for us in this budget because we have the space. We had brought down the debt to GDP ratio from 90 down to 75, 76%. So if in this budget we go slightly higher from 76, 77 to 79 or 78, we can still do that. We can still manage as long as we keep it below 80%. Because we've created this space, because we are being funded properly, because we're earning more revenue. Our compliance has improved. The economic growth is good. We are still projecting more than 3% growth in 2025, compared to some of the other economies. So, in a nutshell, this budget is going to build on the good results of growth, of spending, of investment that came through our deliberate policies and the confidence that we have built in this country. So despite all the noise that might be there, side issues, I think in the minds of the investors, this is one of the best times to expand businesses, invest more, and we're doing a lot of work. DPM Kamkamida has done a lot of good work in the area of trying to get more investments, provide additional confidence, improve the ease of doing business. There are still areas where we have bottlenecks, like immigration and others, but in the last 2 years, we've done a lot of work to improve the ease of doing business. And I think that's producing good results.
Now, we know cost of living is an issue globally, and Fiji is not immune from that. But what can you do to sort of cushion the blow? You have taken some of the steps in the current budget, which including wages and also salaries of civil servants and other sectors. The private sector, there's a level of salary increments that can be seen through the Reserve Bank updates. In terms of some of the items that may be seen as essential, there's a call for maybe more items to go under price control, or looking at FCCC really ensuring that any price reductions are passed down to the consumers. What type of work is going into those areas?
Yeah, Vijay, I will be announcing some steps, some processes, and some details of how we will address some of those issues. You're absolutely right. There are concerns about unscrupulous retailers, businesses that do not pass the benefits that we try and give through tax policies, through incentives that must eventually pass on to the consumers. For example, there are industries where we protect them, we provide duty protection, we provide them incentives, yet we find that the price that they pass on to the consumers is not reflective of what the government intends to do. So we will be announcing certain measures, including, as you said, if we feel that by genuine voluntary realization that government is, for example, if we reduce duties, we expect those who are importing to pass that reduction in duty to the consumers in the form of price, and not just hang on to that price and continue to make exorbitant profit at the expense of the consumers, where government. So sometimes the government may do the right thing. The intention of our policy is that reduction in duty will lead to a reduction in price. But in some cases it doesn't happen. So we are going to come very hard on those kind of practices and thinking that you can benefit from the government's incentive, yet you don't want to pass anything to the consumers. So there will be certain measures that we will be announcing in the budget. We expect, FCCC, Consumer Council, FRCS, and Ministry of Finance to work together to ensure that some of the policies that we announce in the budget will be carefully monitored, and it will ensure that the benefits of those policies are passed down to the consumers.
Revenue collections, you're hitting some historic numbers now in terms of revenue collections. What are you looking at in finishing the current budget year with the total revenue numbers, and how are you anticipating to grow this? Of course, if you grow things like invest more, grow the pie, government benefits too in getting more revenue from it. What are you expecting, and also in terms of compliance, because you yourself have said there's the black economy has been in operation for years, where government is, and the people of Fiji are losing out on those tax dollars as well.
Precisely, Vijay, that's a very good question. So our record in the last two budgets has been that our revenue collection has been above the forecast that we made in the budget. So that's a very good achievement for the government and for us in the Ministry of Finance, because our budget, that shows that our budget was realistic. Our expenditure forecast was realistic, our revenue forecast was realistic, because we collected more than the forecast. Now that comes from two things. One, that the growth momentum continued, investment momentum continued. There's more growth, more investment, more jobs, more spending, more revenue, more income tax, more company tax. So a combination of growth with good policies, we raised our revenue. And both in 2023 and 2024, our forecast, our revenue collection was more than the forecast. And we expect that in 2025, it will be the same. And again, it's a combination of growth, it's a combination of compliance. So we, FRC has set up a task force as well. And part of the work of that task force is to look at a lot of the loopholes, a lot of the unexplained wealth, and FRC is working very closely with other agencies, police, etc., to be able to address not only the issue of drug and drug proceeds, but also businesses, particularly those in the small and medium enterprise category, that they are able to pay the right taxes. So and I'm glad that FRC has done well in terms of strengthening. There's a lot more work still that is needed, and we as a government, we have taken a no-nonsense approach. That doesn't mean hounding taxpayers. That doesn't mean treating our taxpayers. There are so many good, honest taxpayers out there, but there are also a significant number who are not paying what they should be paying, and so we've focused on that. And my sense is very clear that compliance will further raise revenue for us in 2025 and beyond. So we are in a very good position, and the credit must go to the government, for putting these policies, for putting the right people and making sure that we do that. And I'm very pleased with the results that we've achieved so far.
What are you doing to ensure a lot of tax dollars, millions are allocated to all the different ministries? Of course, it can lead to abuse, it can lead to wastage, you have always said that, and it can lead to corruption. The wastage part, there's some calls being made, for example, the NGO coalition, to reduce overseas trips. One of the suggestions made in there, call on that to be considered. And other factors like do all ministries and agencies need to have major conferences in big resorts and resorts in the West, which will result in much more expenditure.
Yeah.
Are you watching that closely?
Vijay, again, those are very important issues that people raise. So let me just respond to that in two ways. One, that there are obviously a lot of benefits for Fiji, in terms of hosting big international conferences. Sometimes, the costs of funding those in, say, big resorts. Let's say if there is a Commonwealth law ministers meeting, which probably would be held here in Fiji next year or this year, or any other ministers meeting. Government has to put in certain funding, but some of the benefits of that conference hosting itself outweighs the cost. So we have to balance. But you're right, we find that a lot of ministries go in very fancy places to do their own workshops and training. So we are saying to those ministries, let's cut on some of those. It makes sense to do that. Overseas trips, again, on balance, we could do some of those, or we could do without some of those trips. But there are important meetings where, participating in person is very important. Fiji is a very important player in the Pacific, a very important country in the international geopolitical scheme of things, geoeconomic strategic position. So participation in some of these meetings are important, but as you said quite rightly, we should continue and always look for options of reducing the size of our delegations, where it's possible to do it by Zoom or other platforms remotely. We should explore that. Some ministers travel more than the others, depending on the portfolio in which they are. But yes, I think those are expenditures that can be rationalized. But in the bigger scheme of things, Vijay, a lot of the wastage, big wastage, doesn't normally happen in terms of organizing conferences or overseas trips. You might look at $1 or $2 million, plus or minus. But I think what happened in the past, large volumes of money, millions of dollars, were prioritized into wrong sectors, like spending close to $80 million to improve 5-kilometer Queen Elizabeth Drive, building a hospital in Kayasi, spending $40-50 million there. And then you can continue to list a number of those large projects over the last several years, and all that, if it is funded through loans, adds up to the debt. So we focused on those.
You're trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
We have made sure that doesn't happen. It's not always very easy to control everything. There would be holes that needs to be plugged all the time. Some ministries do this better than the others, but as a government, I think everyone understands, from the experience of the past. So some of them are learning from the past, what happened, changing processes and procedures, and we at the Ministry of Finance, we are taking a hard line on making sure that proper processes, proper documentation, and proper value for money is achieved. I think sometimes, you can look at the processes and everything else, but the ultimate is the value for money that you get by spending on a particular project, on a particular program. But as a government, I think we have done well in the bigger scheme of things, that we have cut down those kind of, I know sometimes people on the social media, you look at, $500,000, $1 million. These are not small amounts of money. But when you talk about, tens of millions of dollars, when you talk about 120, 130 million on Walesi, when you talk about, millions of dollars spent through COVID's PR, and there are many examples of that. Obviously, we've cut all that out. And that's why we are able to do so many other things for the people.
History will repeat itself, Deputy Prime Minister, if people are not taken to task. We know there's a few things when the current government came in, was said will be investigated in relation to abuse of taxpayers' money. And this is in relation to investigations and how that is progressing, and also ensuring that action is taken in terms of those people who abused the hard-earned tax dollars of the country. Are all investigations complete, or what is being done in relation to that?
Well, one of the things, Vijay, I think that's a very important question, but one of the things that we as a government were very mindful, and despite all the social media criticisms and some very unfairly, this government has taken a very hands-off approach, in terms of letting the institutions responsible to investigate this and bring people to account. I'm afraid, the speed at which, this might have, or this should have happened, probably is not happening. But our resolve remains that, if there is abuse of, government funds that have happened in the past, then those responsible must be held accountable. And I hope that it will be done in an independent, in a transparent and accountable manner. And we expect institutions to deliver that.
So just in relation to the main sectors, health, education, roads, bridges and water, those are some of the areas which could be rated as you have a lot of work to do in terms of hospitals and schools. We're getting statistics that a lot of them need urgent repair. So what type of work is done?
Vijay, that's a very important subject, and let me just spend some time on that. When we came in, we inherited one of the most dilapidated ever in the history of this country, most dilapidated state of infrastructure in health, in education. So as a government, we were not afraid. We initiated immediately a World Bank review of our health sector. And in that report, it's very clear that our health outcomes were better in the 70s, 80s and the 90s. And in the last 15 to 20 years, our health outcomes have become worse than what it was. So when we came in, we saw health centers around the country, whether it's Tabuni, whether it's Draketi, whether it's Wanikoro, whether it's Reki Reki, whether it's Korovo, whether it's Nasori, whether it's Kandavu. These infrastructure were falling apart. So we immediately got into funding allocations to ensure that we fix some of these immediate infrastructure. So we fixed a lot of health centers around the country, nursing stations. Nasori Health Center was falling apart. We got the New Zealand government, and I want to thank the New Zealand government for fixing that health center, saving 70,000 people in 1 year. I went to Kandavu, I saw the state of the hospital. It was falling apart for 10, 15 years. The nurses, the doctors, mothers were giving birth in the veranda. The generator was not working. So these are things that we are trying to handle. CWM, we got the Australian government, we to do a master plan to review the health facilities, and the first sentence in that report by the Australian government says it all: years of neglect of the CWM hospital. We are fixing that now. Australian government, and again I want to thank the Australian government for supporting that. And we believe that in the next 6 to 9 months, a lot of those pending issues would be resolved. We could have done slightly better, in terms of execution, the expenditure, the budget that we allocated, but these are issues that we still have to deal with. For example, the cleaning contract. Some of the things that were destroyed in the old system, cleaners, carpenters, painters, everybody was at the hospital. Now we have cleaning contracts. So we haven't been able to change some of those as quickly as we should have. But the work is being done. Then on the education infrastructure, we got the Australian government again, this government, because we realized that the urban schools were totally crowded. So we got the Australian government to do the audit of more than 80 schools in the Suvarnasori area. And the report that was launched by the Honourable Prime Minister is very clear. Hardly any new classrooms have been built in Suvarnasori area in the last 10-15 years. Washrooms, sanitation facilities. On average in primary schools, there are 50 to 60 students in a class. Same with the high schools. The quality of teaching had gone down. And so what we're doing now, and again the Australian government has already provided some funding, we are going to put additional funding, and we are fixing schools. In Vanua Levu, for example, the schools, students were studying in tents until 2023. With the support of the Australian government, we've been able to build new schools, got students out of the tent. So these are priorities that we put in place for education, health. There's a lot of work still that needs to be done in the health sector, and I'm pleased to say that we will be making some additional announcements about more and better health infrastructure, particularly in terms of the hospitals. We are still sorting out the concession agreement with the Aspen Medical, HCF. Again, the cost of running Lautoka and Bar Hospital is a very challenging one for government, and we hope that the new agreement will resolve that. So these are issues, Vijay, that we have handled in the last 2.5 years. And the amount of work that we've done is significant. In the area of education, of course, there is an Education Commission now that will look at the curriculum and what has happened, the haphazard nature in which the reforms took place. Nobody knows what happened. So hopefully the Education Commission will come out with a report that lays out very clearly what has happened in the past, what are the recommendations, what are the changes that we can make in the curriculum, in the structure, in the whole teaching profession. In the area of scholarships, this loan scheme was sold out as one of the best things that happened in the country. It was not. It was a scheme where $160 to $170 million went down the drain. The planned, manpower planning, human resource planning went down the drain. The loan scheme just allowed investors open the doors. People who should have been doing, engineering or plumbing or carpentry, ended up in the university with loans. $650 million debt to the government we inherited when we came in, and the percentage, on average, we were getting $3 to $4 to $5 million back. So what we did, we abolished that. We wrote off the loan, brought a merit-based scholarship, completely merit-based scholarship, completely merit-based. And now we have a scholarship scheme where we are clearly trying to say, okay, if you have marks to do MBBS, you get a scholarship. If you have marks to do engineering, you do engineering. If you have marks to do nursing, you do nursing. If you don't have marks to go to the university, you go to Polytech, you go to FNU to do carpentry, automotive engineering, or plumbing, or panel beating, or whatever the skills that we need. So we run out of skilled people in this country, and that's one of the major challenges for our investors right now. We have to import labor, and that's where the immigration comes in. So this is something that this government has changed in 2 years, and it's working very well. You know, some of the politicians who want to play the rice card said, oh, you know, Indian students would miss out on a scholarship. I challenge them, bring one Indian student who applied, who wanted to get a scholarship and had the marks, you know, cut-off marks, was denied a scholarship. Not one. This is the first time in Fiji's history that we have a completely merit-based scholarship, and it is providing scholarships to all the students who are eligible, who want a scholarship. Of course, there are students who don't want a scholarship. They want to go private because they don't want to be bonded. The only thing we require now is if we give you a scholarship, you got to be bonded. You got to save the country for that many years. If you don't want to save, then you pay and go.
And you will continue with this system?
We will continue with that in the new budget, and there will be additional improvements in the scheme, and there will be good news for the students as well.
Just asking you about water, there was a big issue with elevated areas at Tadirua, Tamavua, where a pipeline was supposed to run from the Viria system to ease the water wars that has been going on for years in higher areas of Tamavua, Samambula and all those areas.
That work, Vijay, is going on, and I'm sure we'll be making some announcements on that. A lot of work has gone, and I know and we understand the frustration of the people around Tamavua, Cunningham, Sokoda, Tandirua areas. The Viria project has completely solved the problem around Subanasori area, particularly in the Sori area, where we don't get any complaints. In other rural areas, you know, in the last budget, that is again a new scheme. We provided additional funding, close to about $6 million for boreholes. And we will be providing about the same amount of funding and additional in other ministries to ensure that before, in areas where we don't expect piped water to be immediately available, boreholes would be the way to go, and there are a lot of work that is already being done to provide clean drinking water through boreholes to families in different parts of the country. In fact, in the last budget, we said 1,000 boreholes in Veti Levu, 500 in Banua Levu, and 200 in the Maritime Islands.
Professor Prasad, almost 900 schools in Fiji are run by school management committees. Of course, government owns about 13 or so of them. All these committees, they have come together and they made a request in relation to the increase in free education grant. They're saying it's based on the dilapidated infrastructure that they have to look after, and with limited resources on how they work with different things. Are you giving due consideration to the increase in free education?
We will be making some very positive announcements about the role of the school management. In fact, we want to fund the School Management Association. We also want to provide grants to the head teachers and the principals association. We want to strengthen these professional bodies. We want to strengthen management committees so that there is a bigger partnership, and there will be some other announcements that we will make in the budget.
Also the flexibility, we had the Minister for Education on the show last night on Straight Talk, and questions were raised again from the management committees to allow the government to ensure the parents at least can pay a certain levy in terms of helping in, for example, building levy, etc., to ensure that the parents also play the role that the government does not have to provide all the funding for everything in
Sure,
school.
sure.
And the other issue was about giving flexibility to have fundraising activities for those parents who want to participate. What are your thoughts on that?
We will be making some announcements in that area, and there will be some positive announcements. And as I said, we want to strengthen that partnership. And as you said, 99% of the schools in this country are owned by school committees, religious organizations, school managements. That partnership was completely destroyed by the previous government. And that is part of the reason why we have such dilapidated, staff quarters. Never in the history of this country, right from the 70s that I have seen, that staff quarters in the rural areas or anywhere were in such dilapidated conditions. Because what the previous government did, they said, because this was an election gimmick, political gimmick that they were playing with the lives of children, saying to the parents, no, you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to come to school. We're going to provide the bus fare, we're going to provide the school fees. But they were not giving enough money to the school managements to maintain the quarters, to maintain the infrastructure. Yes, the parents were happy that they didn't have to contribute anything, but the government was not giving them enough money, and this is why no new schools were built, no new classrooms were built. They stopped fundraising, so they completely, and I tell you, Vijay, people tell me that I keep talking about the previous government. But if we don't talk about the damage that they did in some of the areas, some of them are irreversible. It will take years to catch up. And this is the enormity of the problem that we've inherited in sectors like health, in education, in infrastructure. This is the reality. We cannot dream to live in Switzerland and not pay the taxes that people in Switzerland pay, and not take the responsibility. This is what the previous government did. They were telling the people that you should live like people do in Singapore or Switzerland, but they didn't have the resources to do those things. Now, we are not providing those utopian dreams to the people. We are saying, this is what is there. This is what we need to do. And so part of our strategy would be to ensure that we bring the parents, the school managements, the committees together. And there will be some very positive announcements that we will make in supporting government's agenda to bring back that partnership, so that we collectively work to ensure that school infrastructure, classrooms, staff quarters, and the teachers, parents, school managements are able to work together.
We'll talk about drugs and crime as the final issue. Police, the last press conference, one of the press conferences, the police commissioner had said there were about 500 police officers that had left. And most likely gone overseas, and of course we need police patrols. You have, in your recent budget addresses, you have made the statement very clearly that you need more police on beat patrol, to be out on foot patrol, to provide that sense of security that police officers are on the ground. Crime in certain areas are rising. We also have the issue of drugs. We saw the Prime Minister, we contacted him on Saturday. He visited the site at Robertson Road, where children are openly doing drugs. Definitely visibility, presence, and in the night as well, where people have been mugged in the night, even in the capital city. What is the plan for crime and also in relation to drugs?
Vijay, that's another big issue. Drug, crime, other related social ills that we are experiencing. Fortunately, we now have a very good Commissioner of Police, somebody who comes from the policing background. We have a Minister for Policing, and I think between the two of them and the government's resolve in making sure that we address the huge scourge of drug in this country, we need to get rid of that, because it is not only destroying individuals, it's destroying families, it's destroying societies, and it's destroying the country. That's a fact. We have in the last two budgets, provided additional funding. We have provided additional funding so that the police are paid well. In this budget, we will be making some further announcements with respect to how we can support the police force further in terms of increasing the size of the police force, in terms of increasing the visibility of the police force. And I think the Commissioner of Police has already embarked on certain approaches, like making sure that people who spend time drinking in communities and public places, according to the Commissioner of Police, there is already a law that they can't. But over the years, that was allowed to fester. So I am very pleased with the discussion that I've had with the Commissioner of Police about the next budget and the Commissioner's plans, in terms of addressing. And already I think there are good results in the approach that they have taken. On the drug issue, we have set up a drug rehab policy. We're providing tax incentives, we're providing additional funding. So there is a collective effort that we are putting in, and in terms of, and also making sure that our border control, FRCS, if you look at Vijay, this is what people need to realize. The number of drug busts, the number of interventions that have happened in the last 2.5 years. This thing was happening for the last so many years. How many drug busts took place? Because people at the highest level at that time were involved in some of these things. And so we are as a government, you see there are more people being charged for those kind of offenses. And I think the message that this government is sending to the offenders, the drug peddlers, drug traders, smugglers, that we're going to come very hard on you people. But we are also saying to our people, to our children, to our parents, be afraid of drugs. It's a big threat. It's a threat to the individuals, it's a threat to their parents, it's a threat to their family, threat to the society, threat to the country. It's a big threat. It's something that everyone, every parent, every child should be afraid of getting into. And I think with education, with going hard on offenders, smugglers, people who might be aiding and abetting this, we will be able to get this under control. And it is not going to happen overnight, but government has started on the right footing, right resolve, and we are putting our money where our mouth is on this.
My final question in relation to taxes. We know next week you will be in Parliament announcing. Will there be any surprises in terms of personal income tax or in terms of taxes which may be going up or that may affect cost of living?
There would be no big surprises, Vijay. I can confirm that there will be no reduction in the income tax threshold of 30,000. So that I can confirm that now. But as I said, we in the last two budgets, we've been very transparent and open. We don't hide things. So we don't want surprises. We want predictability, we want consistency, and that's what you will see in the next budget. But you will also see, as I said earlier, an effort to ensure that our domestic approach to the impending global economic crisis is handled carefully, and part of the way in which we are going to handle that is through our expenditure policy and making sure that we have a slightly expansionary budget. We may have a slightly higher deficit, but that's fine because we did very well in the last two budgets, in the last 2 years in terms of growth, in terms of revenue, and our overall budget framework would be sustainable, consistent with our long-term objective of managing our economy in a fiscally responsible manner.
Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much for your time to speak to our viewers around Fiji and around the world directly tonight, and all the best for the remaining days as you prepare your budget address. I'm sure everybody knows that whatever you decide affects our pockets, whatever you decide also affects our livelihood in terms of government services. So we're looking forward to the announcement next Friday at 10 a.m.
27th, next Friday at 10 a.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.